My name is Micha Jackson, and I study the conservation of coastal wetlands and coastal shorebirds. So I'm very passionate about mud, and I'm very passionate about these gorgeous little birds that undertake some of the most epic migrations of any animals on Earth. Australia is situated in the East Asian Australasian flyway, and this is an area that we've designated because millions of water birds move through this area, including lots of migratory shorebird species, and they move through the area every year in a fairly predictable way. So for shorebirds, this includes non-breeding areas here in Australia, as well as in New Zealand and Southeast Asia, and then the shorebirds migrate through mostly coastal areas in Eastern Asia and up to breeding grounds in Alaska, in Siberia, in Mongolia, northern China. So they make these incredible migrations every year, and they move a huge distance from north to south. Shorebirds are really reliant on a particular type of wetland, which is intertidal wetlands. So this is the muddy part of the coast that's exposed at low tide and covered by seawater at high tide. And shorebirds are very dependent on intertidal wetlands for foraging, for finding food, little clams, crabs, things that like to hide in the mud. But what we've learned over the past few years is that quite a lot of shorebird species are declining really rapidly, so their populations are not doing very well. The coastal areas of the East Asian Australasian flyway are some of the most densely human populated places on Earth. And we know now that this dense development is having a big impact on shorebird populations because it's causing a lot of loss of coastal wetlands. But we've also found that they've adapted to some degree, and they're using artificial habitats, things like aquaculture ponds, even wastewater treatment ponds. Saltworks are a really important one for shorebirds. And so I think what we really need to look at in this flyway is we know that intertidal wetlands, which are largely natural areas, are really key for the birds, but some of these artificial sites are also really important. And so we need to manage them in an integrated way and look at both of those types of habitats, especially in places that are really human dominated. Fortunately for me, the timing of my PhD was really lucky because there have been some really good developments in terms of how we look at coastal wetlands. So for example, China, where the practice of coastal reclamation has been ongoing for hundreds, if not even thousands of years. So this is where you go into an intertidal area and you put a seawall there and actually cuts that area off from the tide. So it's no longer an area that's sometimes wet and sometimes dry. It becomes dry land, and then you can build stuff on top of it. And China actually announced that they're no longer going to allow development or business-related reclamation of coastal wetlands. And this could be a real game changer for shorebirds. So on top of that, both China and the Republic of Korea have proposed new serial World Heritage nominations. So these would be multiple sites. All of them are intertidal wetland sites that would be added to the World Heritage list if the nominations go through. So that makes things really exciting right now. I mean, there's still a lot of work to do. We still need to work on the management of these sites. We're still seeing proposals for reclamation in places like here in Moreton Bay in Queensland. So certain things are not so exciting, but there are some really positive things happening for a change in our region. I think firstly, just becoming familiar with shorebirds in your area and talking to other people about them is a huge step. And I do worry sometimes that one year, if these birds didn't come back from migration, how many people would notice? How long would it take for us to notice? Secondly, I think we need to stop looking at intertidal areas as great places to make new land for nothing. I mean, these areas not only support a lot of biodiversity, but they provide really important ecosystem services. Things like regulating the climate, things like cleaning the air and water, and protecting coastlines from big storm surges, from erosion. So we need to stop seeing these spaces as, muddy areas with nothing in them that would be a great place, to put new housing or casinos or something on top of. Lastly, shorebirds have to undergo enormous physiological changes in order to be able to migrate successfully. So especially in that period before migration time, around February and March, it's really important that, especially at high tide when they don't have a lot of room, that they're not actually disturbed, because they need to be resting and digesting their food and metabolizing properly so that they can successfully migrate. So I think if people can be aware of this, can encourage other people not to disturb the birds, people make sure that they follow regulations around dog walking and so on, this is really, really important. In order to really achieve conservation of shorebirds, like other migratory species, you need to conserve a network of sites all along the flyway. But if there's just one important stopping point along the way that's making life really difficult for these birds, you're still going to get population declines, even if you're doing the best conservation somewhere else. So I think if we can do this with shorebirds, it sort of provides a model for all sorts of other conservation efforts that also need to overcome transboundary issues that need cooperation in order to be successful.